Okay, kita start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning to Dr. Farah, saya punya supervisor. Today also to my fellow friends lah. Today I will present about approach to spinal cord injury. Boleh dengar suara?
Ya, teruskan. Hello, Diana.
Okay.
Dengar, loud and clear.
We will proceed with approach to spinal cord injury today. Supervised by Dr. Farah lah.
Kena on time sikit ni. 40 minit je ni.
Okay. Today outline is we will start with introduction and then anatomy of spinal cord, etiology of spinal cord injury, pathophysiology, associated condition in spinal cord injury, classification of spinal cord injury, initial evaluation and secondary survey, and also the last one is management of spinal cord injury lah. So for introduction, this is one of the info that I get from the World Health Organization, WHO. So this is key fact from WHO. Every year around the world, between 250,000 and to 500,000 people suffer from spinal cord injury. So the majority of spinal cord injury are due to preventable cause, such as motor vehicle accident, fall or violence lah. And most patients that have spinal cord injury are 2 to 5 times more likely to die prematurely than people without a spinal cord injury, with worse survival rate in low and middle income countries lah. Macam negara-negara di Philippines, Indonesia, ada antara negara yang low and middle income countries. Kalau ada pesakit yang terlibat dengan spinal cord injury, most likely survival rate dia akan lebih tinggi lah.
Malaysia tak kira?
Next. Epidemiology. So research that have been done in the US, the incidence are about 11,000 new cases per year in the US. 34% was incomplete tetraplegia. That most common are central cord syndrome. 25% are complete paraplegia. 2% was complete tetraplegia. 70% was incomplete paraplegia. In Malaysia, kita tak banyak data berkaitan spinal cord injury, but yang saya boleh dapat antaranya adalah most male that with young ages, less than 40 years old, had spinal cord injury with paraplegia, and around 25 to 34 and 55 to 64 years old ages group, with most common causes of injury is motor vehicle accident, fall from a height lah, and 40% are tumor-related cases. Okay. We started. Next, we continue with anatomy of nervous system. As we know, the central nervous system contain brain and spinal cord. Also, there are peripheral nervous system that involve the cranial nerve and peripheral nerve, and autonomic nervous system, which involve the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So today, we will discuss about the central nervous system lah, the spinal cord. So the vertebrae is one of the unique shape that of bones that support the axial musculature and protect the spinal cord and nerve root. So as general information, there are 33 vertebrae with 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 4 coccygeal. So the vertebrae, this is the vertebrae. will form a functional column. That is the inside it is the spinal cord lah. And then the column will divided into three columns, which is the anterior, middle, and posterior. So the anterior part is include the anterior longitudinal ligament and also anterior 2 to 3rd vertebral body and or annulus. Middle part is posterior longitudinal ligament and the posterior 1/3 of vertebral body annulus. Posterior part involve the pedicle, lamina, spinous process, and ligaments. So this vertebra have its normal curve, which is if there is any impact of the curve may cause the injury to the spinal cord. So the normal curve of the vertebrae is cervical lordosis, thoracic kyphosis, lumbar lordosis, and sacral kyphosis. Okay, next we move to spinal cord. This is the column which the spinal cord inside the column lah. So the spinal cord runs from the brainstem to the cornus medullaris, which terminate at lumbar 1. Within the spinal cord where it is protected. The terminal filum and cauda equina lumbar and sacral nerve root continue in the spinal canal, which is then emerge from the roots lah. And then it has layered covering membranes, which we call the dura mater, aryanoid mater, and also pia mater. So the spinal cord is made up of multiple ascending sensory and descending motor tract, tracts, which is also we call the sensory and motor tract function lah. And the columns divided in cervical and lumbar spine, which kalau kat tengok kat sini kita nampak dia punya dekat cervical and lumbar ni spinal cord dia lebih lebar sebab dia ada roots from plexus to innervate the upper limb and lower limb extremities. So the spinal cord are paired within right and left. Nerve root emerge from each level lah. So setiap ada pembahagian pada kiri dan kanan. Nerve root are made up of ventral motor and dorsal sensory roots. So the injury can be either complete or incomplete. This is part of the spinal cord, which we can see that there is a descending tract which carry out the motor function, also ascending tract that carry out the sensory function. So the descending tract involve the main voluntary motor or upper extremity motor, and the ventral corticospinal tract involve the voluntary motor function. So for the ascending tract, there is the dorsal column, which is involved in deep touch proprioception, vibratory. The lateral spinal thalamic tract that involve carry out the sensory function, the pain and the temperature. The ventral spinal thalamic tract that involve the light touch sensory function. Okay. Next, the etiology. So most of the for the etiology, most of the spinal cord injury can be caused by many mechanisms and mostly caused by the motor vehicle accident, which is 50% up to 50%, and then can be caused by the patient that fall, gunshot wound, or iatrogenic. And also it is estimated that 3 to 25% of all spinal cord injuries occur after initial traumatic episode due to improper immobilization and transport. So patient-patient yang terlibat dengan ada kes trauma, kadang-kadang spinal cord tu bukan injury sebab trauma tapi disebabkan improper immobilization and transport lah. Pathophysiology, there are two causes that can cause the spinal cord injury. The first one is the primary injury, which is the damage to the neural tissue due to direct trauma. And patient that have direct neural tissue direct trauma, it is irreversible punya cause lah. Mungkin tak boleh baik sepenuhnya. Okay, and then the secondary injury is injury to the adjacent tissue due to decreased perfusion that involve the decrease in perfusion of to the spinal cord lah, which involve the radicular artery, mungkin ada obstruction ataupun reduced perfusion lah kat situ. And then can cause by lipid peroxidation, free radical cytokines, which is can steal the electron from lipid in the cell membrane, resulting the cell damage in the spinal cord. Also can be due to cell apoptosis lah. So patient that have spinal cord injury, they are
Ahmad ni siapa? Boleh off mic tak?
Have the associated condition in spinal cord injury. We can divide it into two shock, which is the neurogenic shock and spinal shock. So the first one is neurogenic shock, which is characterized by hypotension and relative bradycardia in patient with an acute spinal cord injury. So kenapa boleh jadi neurogenic shock? Sebab dia ada circulatory collapse from the loss of sympathetic tone, disruption of autonomic pathway within the spinal cord lah, yang mana dia akan membuatkan lack of sympathetic tone, decrease of systemic vascular resistance, and then pooling of blood in extremities and can cause hypotension. Sama juga macam most patient trauma boleh jadi spinal shock lah. So the spinal shock is defined as temporary loss of spinal cord function and reflex activity below the level of spinal cord injury, which is characterized by spastic reflex paralysis. Can be also can be bradycardia and hypotension due to loss of sympathetic tone. So untuk membezakan neurogenic shock dengan spinal shock adalah kita kena periksa absence of bulbar cavernous reflex. The reflex characterized by anal sphincter contraction in response to squeezing of the gland penis or tugging or indwelling follicle catheter. So perbezaannya adalah kita kena check kena check bulbar cavernous reflex. For spinal shock, dia tak ada reflex ni lah. So in spinal shock, the timing is variable, but usually spinal shock ni boleh resolve within 48 hours. But dia punya progress tu slowly boleh up to days of weeks lah.
Diana dengar tak?
Stages of spinal shock. In phase 1, patient may have hyporeflex from 0 to 48 hours, which is the reflex or hyporeflex. And then phase 2.
Ahmad ni siapa? Boleh off mic tak?
Ya. Dengar. Ada soalan ke? Saya tak dengar dekat.
Tak dengar. Awak cakap apa? Awak dengar tak saya cakap?
Sekejap.
Dengar.
Mana?
Tak, Diana ni, saya rasa dia yang tak dengar. Ahmad ni siapa ya?
Ahmad pun tak dengar ni.
Saya tak dengar suara siapa-siapa tu yang saya proceed je.
Oh, tak dengar.
Oh, dengar tak sekarang? Hello.
Suara Farah saya dengar lah.
Ada soalan ke?
Katalah Diana tak respon.
Tak dengar rata. Sekejap. Ni pun ada orang mesej lagi.
Dengar tak Diana?
Mana nak dengar suaranya?
Dengar tak Diana?
Sekejap Saya tak dengar suara siapa-siapa.
Kena makan tu besar. Jadi pada mampu tu. Tak apa. Alahan tu tak apa. Ya.
Ada dengar suara tak?
Suara Diana dengar. Diana dengar tak suara kita orang?
Okey Doktor. Saya pasang dekat handphone saya, dengar lah suara Doktor.
Tak, tapi sekarang jadi double lah bunyi dia.
Dengar double
Sebab suara daripada phone tu dia masuk dalam mic awak. Tapi tak apalah, taklah teruk sangat, boleh je. Ahmad ni siapa? Tahu tak?
Tak tahu siapa dia.
Tak apalah. Asal tak.
Diana nak tanya soalan boleh?
Ya Doktor, boleh.
Okey, tadi awak cakap pasal neurogenic shock kan?
Ya Doktor.
Because of disruption of the sympathetic chain lah dekat spinal cord kan? Okay, so which level yang ada sympathetic chain tu? Adakah semua level ataupun there are certain level sahaja?
Level of sympathetic tone.
Let's say kalau dia ada injury dekat L4, adakah kemungkinan besar dia akan dapat adakah kemungkinan besar dia akan dapat neurogenic shock?
L4 mostly yang ada sympathetic tone ni dekat cervical punya injury.
Cervical, lagi apa, thoracic pun ada.
Thoracic ada, yang involve macam paraplegia up to thoracic T11.
So L1, L2 pun ada juga sikit sympathetic chain dia kan. Tapi dekat bawah-bawah tu dah tak ada. So if you are injured dekat L4 level, most likely you takkan dapat lah neurogenic shock. Tapi paraplegia tu tak involve the sympathetic. Paraplegia because of the motor kan. So the favorite question lah for master student, adakah what's the difference between neurogenic shock and spinal shock? Yang tu memang selalu akan ditanya lah dalam exam. Okay, continue.
So this is the difference between the spinal shock, neurogenic shock and hypovolemic shock. So kalau patient dengan trauma, tengok patient having hypotension, but if the pulse is tachycardia, most likely akan ada hypovolemic shock lah. This one kita kena cari the cause of hypovolemic shock, even is there any open wound, bleeding, ongoing. So kita kena treat as in hypovolemic shock with the following, kena increase balik dia punya preloads lah. Okay, for neurogenic shock, patient can have hypotension also bradycardia, tapi yang membezakan adalah yang reflect bubur cavernosus tadi. So kalau spinal shock memang tak ada lah, the absence of bubur cavernosus reflex, and also the spinal shock can resolve after 48 to 72 hours lah. This is the classification of spinal cord injury. As the description, we can divide it into 4. The tetraplegia, paraplegia, complete and incomplete. So for tetraplegia, mostly patient that involve the cervical injury up to C5 to C6 lah. The tetraplegia having impact of function in the arm, trunk, legs and pelvic organ. For the paraplegia, injury to the thoracic lumbar or sacral segment, leading to impairment of function in the trunk, legs and pelvic organ, tapi dia punya arm function is preserved. Okay. For complete and incomplete, complete as described as no spare of motor or sensory function below the affected level. So kalau complete ni patient, kalau kita assess, kita kena assess waktu patient dah recovered from spinal shock. For the incomplete spinal cord injury, the injury with some preserved motor or sensory function below the level of injury lah. This is type of incomplete spinal injury. There are many types, 6 type of spinal cord injury lah. There are anterior cord syndrome, which is kalau kita periksa dia akan ada bilateral motor, light touch and temperature below level of vision, akan ada impact dekat situ lah. For the central cord syndrome, they are involving the distal upper extremity motor function. The posterior cord syndrome ada impact of bilateral loss of light touch, proprioception and vibration. Brown-Sequard syndrome, there will be ipsilateral motor function, proprioception and vibration. Also, the patient can have contralateral loss of pain and temperature. So, kalau Brown-Sequard syndrome ni jadi sebelah saja, and contralateral side akan ada loss of pain and temperature lah. For conus medullaris, there mostly injury to the distal spinal cord between the T11 to L1 vertebrae. For caudal equina syndrome, injury to the lumbosacral root from L2 vertebrae to the sacrum. So patient may have symmetric involvement or asymmetric involvement, hyperreflexia, sedative anesthesia. So ini kita kena buat proper neurological examination lah.
Semua pun kena buat proper neurological examination.
Also, there is ASIA classification. Yang ni kita, untuk ASIA impairment scale ni kita pakai ASIA chart lah. Yang ni dia melibatkan complete dengan incomplete spinal cord injury. So macam mana kita nak classify tu ASIA impairment scale ni, kita pakai ASIA chart. So what is ASIA chart? ASIA chart is the American Spinal Injury Association from 4 standard neurological classification of spinal cord injury, which is the patient are classified according to ASIA impairment scale. Yang buat ASIA chart ni adalah American Spinal Injury Association dengan International Spinal Cord Society. So they form this ASIA chart. Mostly kita akan nampak chart ni dekat AutoWatt lah. Dekat ED rasanya ada kot.
Ada.
Okay.
Korang daripada Automai cari kat ED juga chart ni.
Okay, ada ASIA chart ni. And bila nak kena buat ASIA chart ni, sepatutnya kena buat waktu patient masih di ED lah. So kena assess patient, kita kena buat test untuk dia punya motoric function and sensory function. So this is the column yang kita kena isi. Ada motor, right and left. Lepas tu ada light touch and pinprick lah. Untuk ASIA impairment scale ni, kalau tengok yang complete ni, dia tulis no motor or sensory function is preserved in the sacral segment S4 sampai S5. Kalau incomplete ni, dia ada sensory but no motor function is preserved. Kalau yang B ni, selalunya motor function dia tu ada preserve tapi dia less than 3/5 lah. Kalau less than 3/5, yang ni dia motor function dia tak ada. For yang type C, dia incomplete. Yang ni yang less than 3. Kalau yang D punya, dia motor function dia preserve more than 3/5. So kalau E tu normal function lah. So the component of the test are 3 main parts: the strength test, and light touch, sensitivity and pinprick. Light touch ni kita kena pakai cotton, and then the pinprick kita pakai pinpoint punya alat lah, sharp, dia ada alat dia. So the lowest level of motor control is voluntary anal contraction. Lowest level of sensation is the anal pressure. Okay, we move to initial evaluation and secondary survey. So, patient dengan traumatic case that involve the spinal cord injury, dia punya treatment tu sebenarnya start daripada accident scene, which is involve the proper spinal immobilization lah. So the treatment should be include the rigid spinal collar and transport on firm spine board with the lateral support device. Lateral support device ni dia punya, kita selalunya ada sandbag ataupun ada head fixator, head immobilizator lah. So patient sepatutnya should be rolled with standard lock roll technique with control of cervical spine, and spine board should be used for transport only, and patient should be removed when clinically safe. As add-on je lah, yang ni yang dia kata kalau patient duduk lebih daripada 30 to 60 minit boleh buat patient tu cepat ada decubitus ulcer. So kalau patient dah datang kat kita,
okay. So this is one of the important points. Patient on spinal board. If you're not planning to transport the patient anytime soon, remove the spinal board. The spinal board doesn't do anything to protect the spine. Kalau patient immobile. Maksudnya kalau patient baring je atas katil, there's no point patient on spinal board. It should be used for transfer only. Maksudnya kalau patient suspect spinal injury tapi nak CT scan lagi 3 jam, 4 jam, remove the spinal board. This is something yang semua orang selalu duduk, patient spinal injury kena pakai spinal board. Tapi, try lah anda sendiri baring atas spinal board selama sejam atau 2 jam. Sangat tidak selesa. So spinal board ni only used for transport. If patient is not being transported anywhere dalam masa terdekat, remove the spinal board. It doesn't do anything to protect the spine. Okay, so ni antara benda-benda turun-temurun lah yang diguna pakai. Bila suruh remove je, tak boleh patient ada spine injury. No. Because macam yang Diana cakap, 60 minutes pun dah cukup untuk menyebabkan patient ada bed sore. Decubitus ulcer ni bed sore lah. Then you end up with more problems. So if you're not transporting patient, remove the spinal board. Okay? Semua orang kena clear kan benda ni. Carry on.
Proceed. Okay, this is type of spinal board yang kita selalu nampak dekat ED lah. This is the iron duct long spine board. Ada scoop stretcher, yang ni yang selalu kita nampak juga. Yang lebih-lebihnya ni jarang lah kita nampak. And then this is the cervical collar, emergency cervical collar.
So ni tak perlu risau, ni semua brand-brand je. So dia different style lah. Tapi essentially spinal board ni is something yang rigid supaya dalam transport tu the spine remain still, tak bergerak. So rupa dia tu lain sikit-sikit lah, tapi essentially it serves the same function. Dia adalah rigid board lah. Yang cervical collar ni pun penting juga.
So as the initial treatment, after kita done the proper immobilization, kena buat primary survey lah, which is involve the ATLS, airway and cervical spine protection, breathing and ventilation, splash and hemorrhagic, disability and also exposure. For airway, macam biasa juga, kena check airway pattern, patient unconscious or not. And then put on cervical collar lah kalau waktu tu tak ada lagi cervical collar.
SCI above C5 tu kenapa require intubation?
Sebab dia punya level that involve the diaphragm tu ada dekat C4 ke C5.
Nerve apa yang innervate diaphragm?
Nerve apa?
Nerve apa yang innervate diaphragm?
Aduh, aku.
Kawan-kawan boleh tolong jawab. Jawab dalam chat ke, you know. Diana saja je
Master
nak
student.
test korang ni.
Master student
Panic
ada.
nerve. Panic nerve.
So, phrenic nerve.
Panic nerve.
Excellent. So, phrenic nerve root dia berapa? Semua orang tak dengar ke? Nerve root, phrenic nerve apa? Apa dia?
Tak dengar Razi. Ulang balik.
Ulang balik Razi.
C3, 4, 5, keep the diaphragm alive.
Okay, tu dengar tak Abang Razi cakap apa? C345. C345 keep the diaphragm alive. The main contributor dia adalah C4 rasanya. Tapi C3, C5 pun ada sedikit sumbangan lah. So, if above C5 tu kena, the likelihood your diaphragm is paralyzed lah. When your diaphragm is paralyzed, you cannot breathe lah. That's why require intubation. This is not because of macam GCS 8 ke apa tak. Patient might be conscious, tapi patient is unable to breathe effectively. Or unable to breathe at all lah kalau complete injury above C5.
Okay. Lepas kita dah buat airway, proceed to breathing lah. Sama juga kita check SpO2, tengok trachea deviated atau tak, full lung examination, buat inspection, palpation, percussion and auscultation lah. If any ada injury yang lain kat situ, kena proceed lah. Contoh kalau ada pneumothorax, kena buat needle tracheostomy ataupun kena basically yang primary survey ni kena stablekan patient dululah. Kalau kita move to circulation, sama juga check vital signs, tap BP, heart rate, any open wound, ada any ongoing bleeding. Kalau ada any ongoing bleeding, mungkin kena apply pressure dressing lah. So for disability, kita check the patient punya GCS, DST, and then kalau kata ada GCS drop ataupun memang patient tak sedar, mungkin ada indication for CT brain. Macam tu. Exposure sama juga, kita check patient punya temperature lah. So visual and manual inspection of entire spine should be performed. Once patient dah stable, kita proceed to secondary survey. So for the secondary survey, kita kena buat proper cervical spine examination. Mana yang ni kita kena remove immobilization collar, kena check lah dia punya neck lah. Examine face and scalp for evidence of any direct trauma. Inspect for angular or rotational deformity in the holding position of the patient head. Palpate posterior cervical spine, kita cari ada any tenderness along the midline or paraspinal tissue. Kena lock row patient to inspect and palpate entire spinal axis and perform careful neurologic exam. So yang ni kita tak boleh buat seorang lah, kena panggil at least 4 orang untuk buat lock roll, proper lock roll. Once patient dah stable, patient mana yang kita perlu buat x-ray untuk rule out spinal cord injury. So there are 2 rules in spinal imaging. There is the National Emergency in X-radiograph Utilization in Study. Also Canadian C-spine rules lah. For the nexus criteria, there are 5 points, which is kita kena level the alertness of patient. Tengok GCS dia berapa. Kalau GCS dia less than 15, kena suspect of spinal cord injury. Also, any tenderness of posterior midline, any neurological deficit, ada evidence of intoxication or any distracting pain lah. So, patient kalau sampai memang kadang-kadang akan rasa sakit. So, agak susah untuk kita rule out. So, bila tengok patient ada sakit je, kita buat x-ray.
Sekejap, Diana. Yang nexus awak punya ni, kriteria untuk buat x-ray ke ni?
Dia
ke kriteria tak payah buat x-ray? normal level, no tenderness, no
Sepatutnya ini
deficit,
kriteria
no
tak,
intoxication.
yang ni tak payah buat x-ray. Yang saya tulis absent ni tak payah.
Tak, sebab soalan atas tu who needs
Kalau
x-ray,
ada,
tapi
kena buat.
kriteria tu macam yang tak payah x-ray. Kalau macam ni semua patient yang lalu depan triage kena x-ray ni. Kena clarify je lah. Saya nak clarify sebab soalan tu who needs x-ray, tapi kriteria tu macam macam yang tak perlu. Okay. So those yang tak ada benda ni, trauma yang tak normal GCS, ada tenderness, ada neurodeficit, ada intoxication, ada distracting pain, then you need to do x-ray. Yang kalau normal semua ni tak payah buat x-ray lah.
Kalau normal ni semua tak payah.
Ni kriteria untuk tak payah buat x-ray lah ni.
So untuk yang Canadian C-spine ni, yang ni kalau patient dia selalu ada dua type lah. Satu yang high injury, high risk or low risk. Yang saya letak ni adalah high risk. Yang mana patient kalau age more than 65, dangerous mechanism of injury, presence of paresthesia, kena buat x-ray lah. So macam dangerous mechanism of injury ni, contohnya macam jatuh dari 3 kaki ataupun 5 anak tangga. Tu kiranya ada dangerous of mechanism lah. Ataupun ada benda jatuh atas kepala. Itu pun antara dangerous mechanism. Ada high speed rollover, yang ada mostly yang high impact of accident lah. Kalau yang low risk tu, kita kena tengok patient boleh ambulate atau tidak. Lepas tu ada any delay neck pain, patient boleh rotate, dia punya range of motion of the neck tu boleh rotate up to 45 degree to the left or to the right. Boleh rotate lah dia punya neck. Kalau tak boleh, any pain, kena buat x-ray lah. Next is we continue with the management of spinal cord injury. So patient nyaman dengan spinal cord injury, macam tadi saya beritahu ada associated condition yang mana boleh jadi hypotension and bradycardia. So the initial medical treatment also the hemodynamic instability and cord perfusion lah. For hemodynamic monitoring, kita boleh start dengan 1 to 2 liter resuscitation. Kena avoid hypertension, kena maintain dia punya MAP 85 to 90 mm mercury for first day, first 7 day if possible. So boleh start dopamine or epinephrine lah.
Okay, untuk bila kata dalam mula-mula patient sampai kat ED tu, sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate whether patient ni hypotensive sebab spinal shock ke ataupun hypotensive sebab hypovolemic shock. Sebab walaupun kita kata bradycardia ni dia merujuk kepada relative bradycardia. Maksud kalau patient BP is 60/40, relative bradycardia means heart rate dia mungkin dalam 100-110 je. Sebab kalau tak, you expect the heart rate will be more. So that's why kalau patient present kat ED mula-mula lah with hypotension, you need to the benda yang first, patient trauma datang dengan hypotension, first thing in your mind should be hypovolemic shock lah. Patient is bleeding. That's why initially the management is bagi fluid. Tapi jangan bagi fluid banyak sangat, because if patient tu sebenarnya hypovolemic shock with fluid, initial resuscitation kan 1 to 2 liters of fluid tu, you should see some response. BP dia may naik sikit then turun balik. One of the telling features patient ni ada spinal shock adalah you bagi fluid pun BP tak pick up. Heart rate persistently macam duk main 100 apa semua, which is a bit, the heart rate is relatively bradycardia for the hypotensive. And patient usually nampak okey. Boleh cakap apa semua despite the hypotension. That's usually the telltale sign that patient ni ada spinal cord injury. And if lepas bagi 1 liter or 1.5 liters nampak patient tu still BP macam tak respon langsung, macam tak naik sikit pun, then you need to start thinking about spinal shock lah. And the management is to start inotrope lah, vasopressive agent macam NOAC. And you'll see that start NOAC even 1 or 2 cc per hour pun BP akan pick up. Usually that's an indication that patient tu sebenarnya ada spinal shock. Biasanya dia tak perlu NOAC high dose pun. Just need 1 or 2 cc per hour je. And the BP will respond. Ini biasa dalam spinal cord, dalam spinal shock lah. So just bear that in mind lah bila dealing with patient trauma with hypotension. Okay. Boleh proceed.
Okay, next is the bradycardia intervention. Kita kena avoid vagus stimulation, bagi proper ventilation and hypoxemic patient by suctioning, or can start atropine lah 0.5 to 1
Kenapa ya?
milligram IV.
Diana, kenapa ya kena hyperventilate dan hyperoxygenate prior to suctioning?
Sebab dia ada impact tu dekat dia punya diaphragm tu lah.
Tadi baru cakap avoid vagal stimulation. So apa kaitan dengan hyperventilate dengan hyperoxygenate prior to suctioning ni? Ada siapa-siapa nak tolong Diana?
Perfusion ke?
Dia ambil dalam buku ortho buku teks.
Betul.
Is there any relevant theory behind this?
Sebab kenapa specifically dia cakap prior to suctioning? Kenapa dia cakap masa suctioning tu? Dia ayat mula-mula avoid vagal stimulation. Lepas tu prior to suctioning.
Tak tahu.
Ini master student, parallel student, MO, any idea? Dia bila you buat suction, if you jolok dalam sangat, you can actually stimulate vagal punya response. Perasan tak? Kadang masa intubate patient, kadang-kadang suddenly patient, masa korang duduk laryngoscope tu patient become bradycardic, hypotensive. Kadang-kadang masa the action of suctioning masuk laryngoscope tu can stimulate vagal response. Sebab tu dulu-dulu zaman PITS pun, tak tahu lah whether they still practice or not. Kadang-kadang before intubate tu dia orang bagi atropine sekali. Just to counteract the takut vagal stimulation masa nak intubation tu. And that's why dia cakap prior to suctioning. Sebab kadang-kadang the action of suctioning, kadang-kadang korang kan suction dengan penuh agresif, jolok kan. So macam takut the action of suctioning tu akan stimulate vagal response lah. And cause further bradycardia and hypotension. Okay. Itu je sebenarnya. Okay, proceed.
Okay, next is the gastrointestinal intervention. Patient kita masukkan nasogastric tube. Start on antiprazole lah. And then for the pain management, kita bagi opioid or morphine untuk kontrol dia punya pain lah. Also the DVT prophylaxis, boleh start heparin, kalau patient in proper bed ada mechanical punya DVT, mechanical punya pump untuk protect ada punya leg tu, boleh start lah. Kalau kat ICU adalah alat tu mechanical. Then the definite management lah, boleh buat close reduction or axial traction. So patient proceed dengan bracing ataupun surgical decompression and stabilization. Jadi mostly auto team lah yang akan buat untuk further management of spinal injury lah.
Contoh acute close reaction dengan axial traction ni apa benda? Dalam konteks spinal cord ni.
Dia ada alat dia tarik kepala.
Apa benda tu? Dipanggil apa?
Dia tak back bearing. Tapi saya tak pernah tengok juga.
Dia panggil apa tu? Semua dah pernah buat auto kan?
Pernah, tapi tak pernah tengok.
Ni yang skull traction ni skull traction ni. Awak bayangkan you know yang skeletal traction yang bubuh kat lutut tu, bubuh dekat skull lah. So dia bubuh pemberat kat kepala tu dia tarik
Hello device kot hello. Hello device kan.
Halo tu pun boleh juga. Halo tu biasa bila nak discharge lah. Skull traction yang biasa ni masa acute phase lah. Halo tu, halo device dah biasa dah masa patient post op ataupun dah macam nak discharge apa semua. Adalah halo brace tu. Kalau tak pernah tengok, Google je lah halo brace. Adalah gambar bersepah. Okay. Carry on.
Okay, that's all for me. This is my end of slide lah. Itu je kot. Ada apa-apa lagi nak tambah atau nak tanya?
Ada siapa-siapa nak tanya soalan kepada Diana?
Itu dia lah. Kita nak bagi tak water break. Kita pergi sini, ada pun tak kita.
Saya tak ada apa-apa dah. Dr. Farah ada nak tambah ke, nak tanya kat Diana sikit? Dr. Farah senyap je tu. Senyap tandanya setuju lah kot. So, any other questions or apa-apa nak clarify? Kalau tak ada, saya rasa sampai di sini sajalah. Okay. Thank you Diana.
Minta maaf tadi ada gangguan sikit waktu. Tak dengar suara.
Tak apa, biasalah. Okay. Jap Diana.
Terima kasih semua.
Jap Diana. Ni Dr. Razi tanya dekat chat ni. Ada role for metal prep tak untuk spinal shock?
Oh ada. Tadi tak ada slide dah.
Tak ada. Tak ada.
Ada.
Tunjuk.
Tadi saya terskip dah. Ni. Terskip kan tadi. Tambah sikit untuk steroid terapi. Selalu untuk patient-patient yang spinal cord injury kita start high dose of methylprednisolone lah. Dia punya teknik kita kena load 30 mg per kg over start within first hours lah. So kalau patient berat dia lebih daripada 70 kilogram, kita start dengan 2 grams of IV methylprednisolone. And then dah habis first hour, kita continue drip 5.4 mg per kg per hour for 23 hours. Kalau kita start dengan if patient tu injury dia less than 3 hours lah. Kalau lebih 3 to 8 hours, kita continue for 48 hours lah.
Okay, ni daripada mana
Yang ni auto kot.
Apa? Buku teks ke? Guideline mana-mana ke?
Tengok ni guideline.
Apa reference? Maksud saya reference tu ni lah. High dose dan teknik ni macam dari reference daripada mana ya?
Yang ni saya ambil dekat Auto Bullets kot.
Auto Bullets. Okay. Kalau recent evidence, I think Dr. Razi pun ada buat dalam chat tadi rasanya. Methylpred ni dia macam questionable sikit lah dia punya benefit. Kena baca around the topic lah. Tapi I think recent evidence cakap benefit of methylprednisolone, high dose methylprednisolone dalam spinal shock is questionable lah sekarang. So mungkin kena baca sikit around the topic lah. I'm not saying dia tak ada benefit. The auto people will argue differently lah. And I mean because this has always been dalam tradisi lah. You know, daripada zaman saya Houseman sampai sekarang pun spinal shock high dose methylprednisolone. The idea is because the pathophysiology they think that spinal shock ni disebabkan oleh swelling lah of the spinal cord post trauma kan. So the theory behind it, bila bagi methylpred ni, it's a strong anti-inflammatory, cause a reduction in the swelling lah, and therefore memendekkan atau mengurangkan keterukan spinal shock tu lah. So tapi recent evidence seems to suggest that the benefit tu macam a bit questionable lah. So kena baca lah around the topic and see lah. Teknik ni saya tak pasti is this the way that we practice dekat hisah. Sebab macam biasanya rasa macam bagi bolus dose sahaja. Tak adalah pula yang 23 hours atau siapa, tapi mungkin sebab saya yang jarang bagilah. Tapi isu apa yang saya nak tekankan adalah high dose methylprednisolone ni bukanlah kata something yang macam when you suspect spinal cord injury, it shouldn't be something yang you bersungguh-sungguh nak bagilah, as in stop doing everything else, nak bagi juga methylpred. No. Still your priority is resuscitation, hemodynamic stabilization dan sebagainya. Then you consider bagi methylprednisolone. Ataupun kalau tak nak bagi pun panggil auto review and let auto decide lah. Because you know benda ni is something yang macam the benefit is questionable, bukan something yang macam 100% bagi benefit. Unlike macam tranexamic acid punya IV tranexamic acid in bleeding patient. That one does change patient punya mortality. Methylpred in spinal shock ni macam the benefit is, you know, mungkin ada mungkin tak ada lah. We need to read around that lah, cari the evidence, whether evidence is strong or not. Okay. Any other questions? Dr. Farah nak tambah, nak tolak?
As a summary lah saya rasa, memang kita punya tajuk ni adalah spinal cord injury. Tapi any patient yang datang dengan you with trauma cases, kalau patient tu hypotension, please bear in mind that hypovolemic shock is the first one lah to cause the hypotension. Okay. So you kena find look hard for any bleeding external or internally kan. And then barulah you buat your primary, kalau baru buat tapi you kena buat daripada awal lah, primary survey and secondary survey. Okay. So saya rasa Diana, you have it's a good presentation for your level. Dan saya rasa you punya source tu kalau boleh janganlah terlalu ke ortoan sangatlah. Make sure it's a emergency punya trauma punya resource lah. Okay, macam Dr. Razi cakap narcissist trial, apa-apa trial yang ada yang related dengan spinal cord injury, you try to present. Okay. So for me overall it's a good effort. It's good knowledge for those yang junior MO and also the recap for the senior MO dan juga masa student lah. Okay. So thank you so much Dr. Diana.
Okay, thank you Dr. Farah.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Fairuz, Dr. Aziz, thank you.